long before the official word was even considered being sent out across the airwaves, everybody knew something was wrong. Something was seriously wrong. Many heads of state were being taken into bunkers. Rich folks got into their private jets and headed to their own bunkers. Everyone who was in the know just seemed to disappear, leaving their aides or seconds or whatever you want to call them to sit there and try to handle things, leaving them in the dark too. Though, thanks to social media, everybody figured out something was wrong because why would suddenly every single one of these senators or chairmans or whichever ones you want to call them decide to disappear all at once? And it didn't take an hour before it went out across again the social medias. Something had just entered our galaxy. Just on the other side of Uranus, there was something out there, a fleet, not a massive fleet, no, about 20 to 30 ships in total, though these ships were fairly large, roughly twice the size of the standard aircraft carrier. But there they were, clear as anything. They could be seen through the telescopes. They weren't trying to hide themselves. If anything, they wanted to be seen. They showed the deceleration as they were coming out of their own FTL, but it would take all the way from the orbit of Uranus all the way to Earth to slow down enough where they could actually stop. This, everyone figured, was more of a show than anything else, because who the hell would have FTL without the ability to stop very, very quickly without splattering themselves helmet first into the front of the ship? It didn't make sense. Why do they want to be noticed? Many of the officials once again tried to hide things as they sent out a message asking what these creatures were and what did they want, letting them know that they have entered human territory. Of course, there was no response for a long time. Everyone figured that why would they even respond? They're going to come and wipe us all off. Many people prayed while everyone else prepared for battle. Anything. All they had to do was fire one time before they were incinerated. That's what they were going to do. They would go down with their fingers on the trigger, and all around the world, magazines were loaded, and everyone waited. Militaries were scrambled, and they waited, but they would have to wait a long time. It would take 13 days before the deceleration and this fleet to park above Earth. When they finally got there, everyone was ready. Reserves were called back up. Militias had put their uniforms back on, and they were ready to rock and roll. Yet as the ships finally halted at around lunar orbit, of all things, there was a message. It simply read,
"We are the spit. We have come here to seek food. We seek sustenance. If you will be kind enough to give us food, we will mean you no harm. This is our decree. This is our desire. This is our demand, and we are hopeful that you will simply comply. If not, we will have to take by force. Prepare for our arrival."
With that, everyone simply looked up and got ready to fire on the first ships that came down. They figured that, of course, these spits, as everyone found out as it's called, were coming down just for a snack. But what did they want? Yet there was only one food source that was there that was abundant on Earth and nowhere else, and that was human. Did they come here for a piece of the humans? Oh, if they want a piece, they're going to get the whole damn thing. And everybody was waiting with safeties off as the shuttles began to lower themselves through the atmosphere. Yet these shuttles did not deploy any weapons, did not deploy countermeasures. It was odd. They just lowered themselves slowly across the planet to different areas. Not surprising, every single one of our supposed leaders hid themselves underground with the exception of two. That was all. Everyone else just wanted to see what was going to happen and then expect to come up and be praised for doing such a wonderful job as they hid under a rock like a little bitch. The shuttles themselves came down and landed smoothly, constantly surrounded by combat aircraft, and as they landed, other combat vehicles came in, everyone with their finger on the trigger, just waiting for the word to fire. These shuttles, these strange arrowhead looking shuttles, came down silently, landed perfectly still, and then they opened the doors. As they did, everybody finally got a look at what these spits look like, and everyone was shocked. These spits look kind of human, a little shorter, not by much, very, very thin, kind of a strange blue and green, different stripes as well. The hair was streaked, almost perfectly silver. It seems as though that was an indication of rank or something, as they didn't have much hair on their head and didn't have much hair anywhere else. In fact, there was only a small little tuft on the back, and that was it. It was clear that there was male and female, but was most clear was the fact that they were either naturally thin or severely emaciated. We looked, and each of them only had 3 fingers and 3 toes, but the face and the head, that's what really stuck out to everyone. The face was that of a mix of human, animal, and almost insect. It was odd, very strange, almost as strange as those big, big ears that seemed to stick out almost like a deer's ears, but wider, longer, but they seemed to flicker and flap and move just like a deer would. Everyone was surprised. They walked up and, well, they all kept their fingers on the trigger. Everyone walked closer and closer to these. And it was actually surprising to see that these spits seemed to hesitate in front of the humans. How could something so advanced be afraid? But there it was, hesitation. Around each of the shuttles, eventually one took command and told everybody to stand back. They walked forward. They addressed who they believed was the commander, which more often than not they were right, as it was the only one with any ornamentation, a strange sash around the midsection, although that tended to be the only clothing they had. He would look at them and try to talk, but there was always an issue, and that was the language barrier. The Spits, of course, mentioned something in their own language, then suddenly their own translator kicked in.
Thank you. Thank you for not making this difficult. Now, my people are in desperate need of sustenance. Have you brought some?
With that, one of the commanders actually stuck out his hand and said, "Absolutely, we have." And in that moment, the Spit grabbed the hand, pulled it up, pulled back the sleeve, and seemed to stick their fangs deep into the man's arm. At first, everybody raised their weapons really quick, but the man stopped and waved his arm, waved them off. And he was just waiting to see what was going to happen. He knew at any moment anybody could fire the one shot that ends one species or the other, but he just stopped everyone right there. He watched as it seemed as though there was no pain. The man looked at his arm and noticed something. The arm was getting thinner, just thinner. It didn't hurt. It was odd. As he tried to say something, the man in charge simply was confused. Uh, is is it my blood? What are you after? What's going on here? And why doesn't this hurt? After a few moments, the commander of the Spits realized that he had made a big mistake, pulled back, and actually kneeled down to apologize.
Our apology issue? No, I, um,
The translator had a lot of problems keeping up with what he was trying to say because he was, in fact, stumbling over his words. But eventually, in front of everybody, going out live across the world, the one that had bit into it simply stated,
it is your internal energy supply that we require. We need it. We are dying.
The one in charge, who turned out to be a 3-star general, waved one of the cameras in close and brought in another personnel. This time, he brought in a personnel that was much more rotund, one of his subordinates. He told his subordinate to raise his arm and give it over to the spit, this time to the female, as she had not fed, but it looked as though she was almost ready to drool. Once again, the female reached up, did not pull hard this time, but contained herself, grabbed at the wrist and the elbow, pulled the arm forward, and then gripped onto it with her mouth. The general, in front of everybody, asked, "Does it hurt?" "No, sir. No pain. I don't know what she's doing, but it feels good." "Ooh, that feels weird, sir. I'm not sure I understand what's going on here, sir, but sir, something's wrong with my arm, sir. I don't know." "Hold it there, soldier. Hold it. We need to see this. Bring the camera in close." And with that, they brought the camera in as close as they could, and they could see that, yes, the arm was actually getting thinner. And yet, they could also see the musculature was still there. They weren't actually taking the muscles. And with that, everyone seemed to realize what was going on. The general actually smiled and said, "Wait, energy reserves? You mean you need human fat? Will any fat do, or does it have to be human?" With that, the Spits were actually confused.
You have more?
"Oh, we have plenty. You could actually get your pick, but nothing's for free."
Of course. Everything in trade. What do you wish to trade?
"That's simple, my friend. Your technology."
Bargained and done.
It seemed as though this was the last bit of the Spitz personnel. They had all actually starved to death, and those that actually starved to death, they left the ships behind, because why bring the ship when you have nobody to even carry? And yet, they were basically feeding off each other what little bit they could as they burned through what energy they had. And here, now they had a planet of people that are so unbelievably fat that now they had a plethora of food. It did not take long before the Spits would actually get their fill, and not only that, many would be grateful that they had actually helped these newcomers out. Not just from the technology boost, of course, but from the fact that the young ones, some so small and so weak that they couldn't even pick themselves up, by simply latching on to somebody who really wanted to lose the weight around their midsection or off their fat ass, suddenly lost a whole bunch of weight. The Spitz DNA turned out to do something also very strange. As it turned out, the reason there was no pain is because there's an anesthetic fluid that goes in with the fangs. But the fluid has a secondary effect. It heals. It regenerates. It was not long at all before anybody who had had this fat sucked out of their system, well, it was actually liquefied first and then sucked out, found out that their bodies had actually started to build back the joints, build back the muscles. They were almost getting younger. Almost. They were regenerating, not rejuvenating. And everybody took this to heart. And before you knew it, within 50 years, the Spitz population had basically exploded. Exploded because now they had plenty to eat. Not only did the human DNA help them out, but the Spitz DNA actually helped humans out. And they became symbiotic. So much so that even with the strangeness compared to each other, there were relationships, although they were exceedingly rare, mainly because the parts didn't exactly line up perfectly. Still, it seems as though humanity was making great strides and was now on the next evolution of itself. But then there was a warning. As it turns out, something had been following the Spits. Something had been tracking them from the discarded ships. Something that had now entered the Sol system. Something that was coming, and it too was hungry. At first, everybody wanted to know about these new creatures. Were they going to help out humanity again? Were we going to get another tech boost? Are we going to suddenly get younger, get stronger, get better, become more awesome? Everybody was looking forward to them, and these were the Swallows, and the Spits were worried. Everybody wanted to know why. In a live broadcast around the world, the original Spitz leader, who now looked absolutely massive, bulky, and strong and healthy, told them that everyone should worry because these new creatures, these new swallows, they were not after the internally created human energy that the Spits actually suck on all the time. No, they were after something else that they have a hard time reproducing. The artificial type of chemical will keep them going for sure. However, it was noted that they were looking for something in particular that only humans make naturally. The Spitz commander actually apologized because this information was on the hard drives of the forgotten ships. The reason they had sent their ships towards humanity is because they had found out about our energy reserves built up in our systems, but there was also something else, the most sought after narcotic in the entire universe. At that moment, he was asked, "What is it?" And the Spitz commander simply said,
You call it adrenochrome.
realizing what that commander had just said, everybody was stunned for only a second until across the entire planet, the only sound heard was safeties being clicked off. Hello, everybody. This is Syntax. Thank you for joining me today on this 100% off the cuff story, which I hope you enjoyed, but had to do it off the cuff due to time restraints. Now, before I go, I need to say that today's winner is Tim MC, and I also need to send out some really special thank yous to the supporters of this channel. Without you, I wouldn't be able to do this. And they are Prozac and Pancakes, SS Demon, Brian Kemp, MTF Guard, Erica Gem, The Wildcat, Guardian Sage, Stave Uwig, Douglas Scarborough, Julius Boone, and Sir. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax, punching out.